The Bunsen burners hissed. Test tubes clinked. A high school science lab hummed with focused students bent over experiments. At the front stood Miss Johnson, calm, collected, guiding her class through a tricky chemical reaction. Then came the laughter, the mocking comment, the sneer of entitlement. One of the students, the bully, leaned across the lab table, grabbed Miss Johnson's throat, and tightened his fingers. Shock rippled through the room. Test tubes shattered. Students gasped. Most teachers would have panicked. Most would have stumbled. But she did neither. In that moment, Miss Johnson seemed to shrink, and yet, somehow, grow larger than anyone expected. They thought she was just a teacher. They didn't know she used to command soldiers under fire, save lives in combat, and endure horrors few could imagine. As whispers spread in the school hallways, what people didn't expect was that Miss Johnson's past would become the most powerful weapon in the fight for respect. The science lab smelled of antiseptic and burnt glass. Faint wisps of vapor curled above Bunsen burners, test tubes clinked softly, and the low murmur of conversation filled the air. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Students moved between benches, carefully pouring liquids, adjusting slides, and noting down observations. At the front of the room stood Miss Johnson, a tall, composed teacher with steady posture, quiet voice, and calm presence. She wore a lab coat over business-casual clothes. Her dark skin gleamed slightly with the effort of standing under the heat lamps. Her voice was firm but kind as she guided a group of students through a complex chemical reaction. From the moment class started, one student had been watching her more than participating. Troy, the bully, smirked over his flask, deliberately making eye contact with her, rolling liquids too fast, shaking his test tubes, letting reactions fizzle, as though he knew exactly how to provoke frustration. He made no attempt to hide his impatience. He whispered loudly enough for nearby students to hear. "Miss Johnson, are you sure you know what you're doing? That looks more like soup than science." Others laughed softly. Some rolled their eyes. A few looked at Miss Johnson, waiting for her to lose her cool. But she didn't. She crouched beside the workbench next to him, guided his hand, showed him a steadier approach, corrected his technique without humiliation. Her voice was calm, composed, never shouting, but firm. "Slow your pour. Control the flame. Measure carefully. Accuracy matters more than speed in chemistry." Troy's smirk widened into something colder. He drifted from bench to bench, watching others complete their experiment properly. He watched them succeed. Then he turned back to Miss Johnson and said, loudly enough for half the class to hear, "You know, some people say women teachers shouldn't teach science. It's too complicated. Maybe you're better off doing something simpler." A few students chuckled. Others looked away awkwardly. The atmosphere shifted, from focused to uncomfortable. Miss Johnson paused, measured her reply, never letting anger show. Science is for everyone who is curious, disciplined, and willing to learn. It isn't about background or who you are. It's about what you understand, what you practice, and how precise you can be. Her tone suggested she would move on. But Troy was not done. Late in the class, when most students were cleaning up, labeling their samples, and clearing benches, teachers sometimes relax. They think the hardest part is over. But not this time. Troy approached her table under the pretense of asking a question about how long a reaction should sit. But his tone was mocking. He leaned in too close, his voice low so only she could hear. "You think you can boss us around, teach us stuff, grade us? Let's see you handle something tougher than this lab work." In that moment, his hand shot forward and grabbed her throat. His fingers squeezed, pressure building. The fluorescent lights hummed. The murmurs in the background died. A few students gasped. Others froze, afraid to step in. The smell of chemicals lingered, but now overshadowed by the shock in the room. Miss Johnson's eyes, hidden behind black glasses, narrowed slightly. She did not panic. Her breath caught for a moment, but she stayed rooted to the spot. Instead of screaming, she steadied herself, placing one hand gently on his arm, then slowly beginning to push him away. Her voice, controlled, calm, came through. "Let go of me now." Her tone held more than anger. It held authority, training, and unspoken power. It was not the voice of someone caught by surprise. It was the voice of someone used to being in control, even in danger. At once, the class erupted in movement. Some students shouted, others ran to pull Troy away or to press the emergency alarm. The door banged, chairs scraped. The school's assistants came rushing in. Troy, startled, released her throat. The look on his face shifted from arrogance to fear. He stepped back. Some of his classmates looked ashamed. Others looked guilty for laughing earlier. The chemical smells were still strong, but now the air was thick with tension, disbelief, and fear. Miss Johnson steadied herself. She wiped a trace of sweat from her forehead. She did not collapse. She did not shout. Instead, she gently cleaned her throat, coughed once, and then addressed the room. "Class, evacuate. Safety first. Step away from the benches. Remain calm. You will remain here under supervision until security arrives." Her voice commanded care, not chaos. The class hesitated, then followed her instructions. Some obeyed immediately. Others glanced at each other uncertainly. Meanwhile, the assistant principal or security guard entered. They took Troy aside. Others hovered. Some murmured, "He went too far. Assault. That was racist, and why did she stay so calm?" When the students were cleared out and the lab was emptying, Miss Johnson gathered herself. She treated the chemical samples and equipment as though nothing had happened, instructing students, those who remained, to clean up, store materials safely. She did not collapse into tears. She did not complain. She did not demand special attention. But some students were staring at her differently now, not with mockery, but with curiosity, confusion, even respect. A few whispered, "Did she used to be in the army or something?" Others asked if she wanted medical help, though her injury was mild. She shook her head, unwilling to show weakness, but grateful for concern. The assistant principal asked her if she was all right. She nodded, touched her throat lightly, and said she would report what happened. She emphasized the importance of maintaining safety, of mutual respect, of not intimidating or harming others. As learners left, the room emptied. Miss Johnson paused. She leaned against a lab table, touched the edge, and looked at the scattered chemical notes, the instruments, then closed her eyes briefly. The controls she maintained in crisis made sense. She was used to it. The calm she displayed was not fluke. Narration will later reveal why she didn't flinch, why she maintained composure, why she spoke with authority while under assault. But at this moment, she remains a teacher, hurt but dignified, firm, in control, and certain that the truth will matter more than the mockery or prejudice she faced. The school corridors were hushed as the students filed out. whispers trailing behind them like shadows. Some spoke of the bully's actions. Others murmured concern for Miss Johnson. A few speculated about what had happened before class. But no one knew the full story. Miss Johnson stood alone in the lab doorway for a moment, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, the smell of chemicals still sharp in the air. Her throat stung, but she adjusted her posture, squared her shoulders, and released a controlled breath. She knew panic would only fuel the rumors. She needed composure. When she finally walked down the deserted hall, she left behind the lab coats, the test tubes, and the angry fingerprints on glass. But she carried something else with her. Discipline, resilience, and a memory that refused to fade. Before she was a teacher, she was a soldier. Not just any soldier. A specialist trained in combat, crisis response, leadership under fire. Days of early sunrise runs in heavy gear. Weeks of rigorous training with weapons, strategy, and survival. Nights of being awoken for drills, for emergencies, for duty. Friends lost, missions changed, and every step forward earned with sweat and sometimes blood. She had joined the armed forces because she believed in protection, service, and accountability. Values she still held tight. In the military, she had learned that force often came from self-control, quiet confidence, never from showy bravado alone. She learned to stay calm when a grenade exploded nearby, when comrades screamed in pain, when decisions had to be made in seconds. When she returned to civilian life, the uniform came off, but the mindset stayed. That composed exterior, that calm mind? Not an act, something ingrained, built over years of training and service. Even in uniform, she had faced people who underestimated her, because she was black, or a woman, or both. Whispers of why she was placed in command, or doubts about how she'd handle fieldwork. She learned to outperform, to be invisible, and yet impossible to ignore. To train harder, prove better, shoulder burdens quietly, but speak up when it mattered most. She carried medals, commendations, and scars. Some visible, many invisible. But she rarely spoke of them. She did not want sympathy, only respect earned on merit. She left active duty service believing that her new mission would be teaching. Shaping minds, inspiring resilience, helping others discover how to think, not just follow. In the classroom, she worked to be more than a teacher. She tried to be a mentor, a guide, a steady presence. She designed experiments carefully. She explained principles clearly. She encouraged mistakes. Because she believed mistakes were the road to learning, not signs of failure. Parents and other teachers sometimes praised her patience. Students often asked her hard questions. Some challenged her authority. Many respected her. But always, she had to fight subtle dismissals. You don't look like a typical science teacher, or you're tough, but are you strict enough? Or even others saying she must have had military-like discipline. She neither denied nor flaunted her past. She let her work speak. Still, she carried the memory of trauma. On restless nights, she awoke from dreams of alarms, explosions, alarms sounding off, commands echoing, flashbacks of battles. Sometimes she touched faint scars, on arms, on mind. They didn't show. She didn't advertise them. But they shaped her. When the bully grabbed her throat, what surprised most was how little she lost control. Not because she feared nothing. Sometimes she feared deeply. But because she had practiced control for emergencies, for danger. Her first reaction was not anger, but stability. She steadied her breathing. She kept her voice even. She avoided overreaction to prevent escalation. She spoke firmly. This internal control confused the bully, who expected panic, tears, submission. Instead, he faced calmness, unshakable composure, a visible refusal to be intimidated. The room's reaction, shock rather than laughter, showed how seldom people saw strength in someone they assumed weak. After class, Miss Johnson took a moment alone in her classroom. She leaned on the wall, her uniform jacket, now neatly stored away, still hanging in her memory, medals and documents tucked safely in drawers at home. She closed her eyes, and the scent of gunfire and dust and fear came back, like echoes threatening to crash in. She breathed slowly. Let the memories pass. Let the pain settle. Then push forward. She texted a trusted friend, a fellow veteran, asking quietly if she had to report the assault. She didn't want sensationalism, only fairness. But she knew she could handle it. She could stand tall. She had no illusions about what would happen. She knew prejudice still existed. She understood that proving rightness sometimes meant enduring whisper campaigns. But she was used to that. She was built for that. Some students began to whisper among themselves. Miss Johnson handled that, calmly. She didn't freak out. Do you think she used to be in the military? Why did she stay so composed, though he had his hand at her throat? She could have shouted, could have screamed, could have attacked back, but she didn't. She told him to let go calmly. What does she know that we don't? Some colleagues noticed the way she walks, how precise her speech is, how little she raises her voice, how disciplined she is under pressure. Some speculated quietly among themselves. Others worried about backlash if students felt the school was favoring her. But no one directly confronted her about her military past yet. Miss Johnson knew the inquiry would come. The school board would want statements. Parents might demand explanations. Students might demand to know why she didn't react like other teachers. Reporters might ask, "Were you in the military?" Or, "Why are you so calm under attack?" She decided she would not lie by omission, but she also would not use her past as a shield for sympathy. She would only speak it when it mattered, when it adds weight, when it clarifies who she is and what she's endured. She began gathering documents at home. Her service record, commendations, letters of reference, proof of her past role. She considered whether she would share the story publicly or only within the school, depending on who asked. But she resolved not to hide. The days after the assault were quieter than expected. The school continued, but something inside the walls had changed. What once was routine now, it's carried a weight. Whispers followed Miss Johnson. Doors opened for her. Students watched her more carefully. Some eyes glinted with respect, others with uncertainty. The assistant principal asked for a written statement. Miss Johnson described everything. What led up to the confrontation, what was said, how it felt, how she responded. She remained factual, calm, unemotional in tone. But beneath every word was the strength she carried silently. Parents asked questions. Why didn't she call the police immediately? Why didn't she fight back harder? Is she okay? Miss Johnson answered with measured honesty. She was all right. She had handled what needed handling. She trusted the school's process. She believed in dignity, not hyperdrama. At school board meetings, the bully's behavior was discussed. Some demanded harsher punishment. Others worried about reputation, lawsuits, media. Through it all, Miss Johnson stayed focused on what mattered. Safety, respect, equality. A few weeks later, one of her former students dropped by her classroom after hours. He'd seen a video on social media. Former teacher saves kid from bullies. Used to be combat soldier? He asked, "Miss Johnson, is it true? Were you in the military?" She paused. Her glasses hid the flicker in her eyes. Then quietly but firmly, she nodded. "Yes, I served. Several years. I did things most people will never know. It helps me stay calm where others panic." The student's face shifted from surprise to respect. He whispered, "I never knew." Word spread slowly. Colleagues nodded at her differently now. Some apologized for being skeptical. A few expressed admiration. But she never sought praise. She simply kept doing her work. Teaching, mentoring, being consistent. When the formal hearing was scheduled, representatives from the school, parents, student body, and the press gathered. The hall was full. Cameras were on. Questions were prepared. The bully sat, fidgeting. His lawyer tried to maintain composure. The school board chair opened the session. "We are here to decide on disciplinary action and to hear all sides of this matter. Let us begin." When asked to speak, Miss Johnson rose. Her voice was calm. "I taught science because I love it. I teach because I believe in curiosity, fairness, and opportunity for all. I joined the military because I believed in service, in stepping up when danger calls, in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." She described missions she had participated in without excessive detail, enough to communicate risk, responsibility, leadership, sacrifice. She mentioned training, discipline, teamwork, and how each shaped her. She explained how all of that taught her patience, resilience, and control. Then she spoke of the assault, what happened in the lab, how she felt, how she reacted, how she refused to let fear or anger remove her dignity. She said she wasn't looking for special treatment, only respect and safety to do her job. Her final words caught in many throats. If some of you assumed a teacher in glasses and a lab coat was weak or easily intimidated, I hope now you will reconsider what you believe about people. Respect is not optional. Bullying is not a laugh. Every person has a story. Every person has value. Silence followed. Then applause. Not forced social pleasantries, but genuine. Some people stood. Others wiped tears. A few students who had previously mocked her looked down, ashamed. Some parents nodded in agreement. School board members exchanged glances. Some showed admiration. The bully remained seated, frowning, clearly struggling with what had been learned. The power dynamic had shifted. It was no longer just teacher versus student. It was values, strength, prejudice, and honor confronting each other. In a closed session afterward, the bully apologized, reluctantly but sincerely. He admitted he underestimated her. He said he returned to class with a different understanding of what weak and strong mean. Though still facing consequences, he seemed changed. The reveal of her past didn't erase the damage done by the bully, but it changed how everyone saw her, how everyone treated her, and how the school culture shifted. The stage was set for the final outcome: respect restored, injustice confronted, education not just in science, but in dignity and empathy. The hearing room emptied slowly. The cameras left. Reporters leaned on their notebooks, whispering about what had just happened. Parents gathered their children. Teachers filed out with measured looks. Amid all that, the bully, Troy, remained seated, his face pale, his body tight like a coiled spring. His lawyer whispered into his ear. Troy nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the spot where Miss Johnson had stood. The spot where she had delivered her words so quietly, yet so powerfully. The memory of everyone staring at her, the hush, the genuine respect. It was new to him, and it frightened him in a way he didn't expect. For the first time, Troy was not in control. The sense of superiority, the laughter, the dismissive jokes, all of it slipped from his grasp. He realized that what he had thought was meaningless, grabbing a teacher's throat, mocking her, was not harmless. He realized now how deeply he had underestimated her. Not just her as an authority figure, but her as a person. A person with history, with sacrifice, with strength built through hardship. Troy's thoughts spun despite his outward stillness. Why didn't I see her differently? Why did I assume what I assumed? Because of her skin color? Because she was a woman? Because she taught rather than demanded respect? No one forced him to think this. The change came because the truth hit him, not as an argument, but as reality. Later, in a private meeting arranged by the school, Troy sat across from Miss Johnson. He looked smaller than ever, shoulders slumped. The air smelled of damp carpet, stale coffee, and tension. The lights overhead seemed too bright. He spoke first, voice low. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't think. I didn't see you. I thought I could get away with it." Miss Johnson nodded, her expression calm but firm. "Thank you for saying that. But I want you to understand what you did. You threatened me. You disrespected me. You hurt other students by making them uncomfortable. That matters." Troy swallowed. "I never expected. I saw your calmness just now. I heard what you said about your past, and I realized I judged you before I knew you." He admitted that some of his friends had laughed, assumed she would be intimidated or overpowered. He admitted the words he used were wrong, that he didn't think of the message behind respect. He said he didn't intend to physically hurt her, but he accepted that he did threaten her safety and dignity. The school board decided on disciplinary actions, suspension, a requirement to attend sensitivity and respect training sessions, possibly a formal apology in front of the class, and reflection essays. The district also provided opportunities for Troy to learn more about the importance of empathy and equality. Troy returned to class eventually under strict conditions, but the environment had changed. Many students looked at him differently, quieter, more cautious. Some avoided him, others stared. Some even nodded respectfully toward Miss Johnson, acknowledging something had changed. Staff meetings included discussions about diversity, respect, bullying, and the value of everyone's background. Some teachers admitted that they, too, judged by appearance at times. The incident became a catalyst for broader reflection. Parents asked about programs to ensure all students feel safe, heard, and respected. Some praised the school for handling the matter. Others debated whether the punishment was enough. But few questioned Miss Johnson's authority or demeanor anymore. In his time at home, he worked through the embarrassment, the shame, and the new understanding that came from Miss Johnson's testimony. He recognized that being physically strong or socially popular does not excuse disrespect or aggression. He began to see what discipline and calmness can do, how true strength lies in self-control and empathy. He studied what he had done wrong, not just what he got caught doing. He realized prejudice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hides in jokes, assumptions, disbelief. he realized the cost of underestimating someone. In private, he sought to change. He committed to listening more, to being less dismissive, to treating peers and authority with respect, irrespective of their gender, race, or occupation. He didn't want to be remembered as the bully who choked a teacher. He wanted to learn, to grow, to be better. As the weeks passed, the story of the incident and Miss Johnson's past circulated quietly but steadily. Some students shared it on social media, others told family members. Many expressed admiration for how composed she was, how powerful this quiet courage became. The key message spread: respect isn't optional. Judging people by appearance is dangerous. Serving your country doesn't end with the uniform. And strength shows itself in many ways: discipline, quiet dignity, and persistence. Troy's fall was not just disciplinary, it was moral. He lost the arrogance that allowed him to harm. He gained the awareness that what people endure matters, that every person has a story, that every person deserves to be treated with dignity. The school hallways felt different now. Lockers clanged, footsteps echoed, but there was a new undertone: respect. Students who once walked past Miss Johnson with indifferent stares now nodded. Some greeted her politely. Others lingered to ask questions or say thank you. The incident had become more than a conflict. It had become a lesson. Parents and teachers organized a small assembly. The principal opened. Today we honor not only the courage of standing up, but the dignity that earned that courage respect. Several students gave short speeches. One shared how witnessing bullying changed how he treated others. Another spoke about the strength shown by someone who many assumed was weak. When Miss Johnson stood up to speak, the room quieted. Her voice was calm. I did not come here to be a symbol. I came here to teach science, to inspire, and to show you that no matter who you are, your background, your history, your challenges, you matter. What matters is your character, your respect for others, your willingness to learn, and your courage to stand up when something is wrong. Thank you for showing me that you care. There was applause, sincere and strong. Some eyes glistened. Some students looked at the bully differently now, not with hatred, but with expectation, that he too learns and grows. Troy, the bully, attempted to reconnect, not with arrogance, but with humility. In supervised school settings, he worked with lab partners, respected instructions, and spoke to Miss Johnson with politeness rather than mockery. He still made mistakes, sometimes reverted to old habits, but now seemed aware of them, embarrassed by them, and committed to doing better. Other students expressed curiosity. Miss Johnson, what made you so calm? Did you really serve in the military? She answered openly, carefully. She spoke of the pride, the sacrifice, the discipline, but also the cost. The weight of expectation, the scars of combat, the reality that respect must be earned, not assumed. The school launched new policies: clearer anti-bullying rules, respect training, talks about prejudice and values. Teachers had workshops, students had sessions on empathy, diversity, and conflict resolution. The administration cited the incident as a turning point. Local media covered the story. Science teacher proves strength isn't always loud. Former soldier educator stands firm against aggression. Bullying consequences, a lesson in respect. The teacher agreed to interviews, but kept the focus on the message: dignity, equality, empathy. She did not seek pity. She sought understanding. People often assume what they see is all there is. They judge before they listen, before they learn. But strength is not always obvious. Courage doesn't always wear a uniform, though sometimes it does, as in Miss Johnson's past. What truly matters is how someone treats others, even when no one is watching. Respect, equality, kindness. These are not optional. They make the difference between fear and safety, between mockery and dignity, between weakness and power. Finish with a moment. Students gathering for a group photo with Miss Johnson, the bully quietly leaving, her glancing at a small worn medal or memento in her home, then placing it carefully back in a drawer, not for show, but remembrance.